been in pre-hospital emergency medicine for over 35 years. He is the EMS chief for the city of Rialto Fire Department. And I'm saying this because I'm sure you guys are popping on going, who is that? And why is he talking about DCM? Well, this is why. He's been published in the Journal of Emergency Medical Services and in the Western Journal of Emergency Medical multiple times. He owns 2 U.S. patents that he wrote. Joe also started a 5-year study at his fire department on cardiac survivability in CPR patients. And due to this ongoing study, he has one, if not the highest cardiac arrest survival rate in the entire world. Joe lectures on the study along with heart, cardiac issues, and cardiac arrest survival across the U.S. and internationally. He's lectured in 6 countries, many cities in the U.S., and in the last few years, teaching his equation of cardiac arrest and survival in CPR status. So he is more than just the silent voice of Vibrant Canine. And that is why we're talking about DCM today, because that's what the problem is. So like we don't know what's going on. So what are your thoughts?
Well, so I think we, or the people with economic interest in this field, want to attribute DCM to anything except for the cheap quality of food that they're producing. We want to attribute it to a grain-free food, or to the legumes, or to proteins and that type of thing. And I would not necessarily agree with them. There's also some discussion about taurine in there. And I think while we still need to continue to research taurine, I don't think there's any good evidence that taurine is the causative factor of DCM. As a matter of fact, I think when you look at the dogs that have DCM, about the same number have taurine deficiencies that don't have taurine deficiencies, but they all have DCM. So it's pretty hard to say that's the causative factor there. I think that, in my humble opinion, that DCM is caused by a number of issues, but primarily it's due to the high carbohydrate content of kibble and dry food and foods that have added fillers that they make it cheaper for the manufacturer, simply. So cheaper for the manufacturer, it's easier to produce, it's more shelf stable, but it has a ton of carbohydrates. Okay, so what's the problem with carbohydrates? The problem is that they spike insulin. They create a hyperinsulinemia in a dog. And so when a dog has really high insulin levels, same as a human, mm-hmm. They tend to store fat, right? So is this a problem? It's only a problem when you change that sugar molecule into a fat molecule and then transport it to be stored. That sugar molecule becomes abrasive, and it abrades the inside of the vessel, right? So it runs along the inside of the vessel and abrades that inside wall of the vessel, right? And then there's damage to those vessels. Cholesterol have to go do their job and try to repair those. And you've got inside of the vessel actually becomes smaller and more turbulent. And that causes pressures to go up in the heart. It causes the heart to work harder every single beat, increasing the muscle of that heart. That muscle then thickens or stiffens, or decreasing the load that the heart has to work against. So that creates a high blood pressure, and the heart has to pump against that high blood pressure all the time. And that creates either the stretching that we see or the thickening of that muscle in the heart muscle itself.
Well, now that's new.
90 some odd % of the population is feeding a high heat processed food, right? Because the dogs are going to continue to secrete the insulin. They're going to continue to use or not get the protein they need, the quality protein. And they're going to continue to have those fats that are oxidized because they're high heated and heat processed. So we're going to continue to have this type of a problem until we fix those issues, right? Until we feed a really high quality protein that is not high heat processed. We feed good fats that are not high heat processed. And we eliminate as much as we can the carbohydrate content. So if you're genetically predisposed for something to happen, then you have a higher chance of it happening. but something's got to cause it to happen. So what's the causative factor there? And so
DCM.
So Kimberly, I think the issue there is if you look at the studies and you really go back, and some of these are gray studies, right? You know what a gray study is? It's when a company that's making money, right, puts out a study, then they adjust the numbers, right? Because numbers never lie, but liars sure can figure, right? Yeah. They adjust the numbers to make it look in their favor, or just to give enough doubt so people question it. And so if you look at the studies, there is no, and I mean no, zero evidence that grain-free has less DCM than grain foods, and that raw foods or boutique, exotic, grain-free foods, there's no evidence, zero. There's not one single study that proves that there's more dogs with DCM on those diets than on a grain diet. It doesn't exist. Now, you look at some of those studies where some of those vets who are paid by some of those larger kibble companies say they literally say in their paper, there's no association between these diets and DCM, and then go on to cite multiple times in their paper why these diets, grain-free, boutique, exotic, raw diets, are causing DCM.
Mm-hmm.
They're gray studies. There's no correlation. It doesn't exist, and they can't show us that there's a correlation there. There's no correlation. It doesn't exist. No, I just think we have to look at the right things, and I'm very concerned that throughout the veterinary community and the feeding community that we're not looking at the right issues and the right causative factors here in DCM. And we're going to go run off and look at taurine. We're going to look at diet-related cardio DCM. We're going to look at anything other than the real problem. And I think we got to feed our dogs high-quality food, not light the match, and then figure out if we have any animals that are outside of those windows that we need to also work on.
Right. And just to wrap up, the whole point of this is ultimately, or what my takeaway is, that when we feed our dogs a diet that is very high in carbs, that's where we're starting the damage train. And that's where, that's basically, we can see why there's so much pushback, because there's a lot of money in feeding our dogs a high carb diet. So thank you so much for joining me.